The first lie sounded like a dog barking, but the truth sounded like an air horn at 3:17 in the morning. That blast ripped through my backyard so hard the kitchen windows rattled in their frames, and my coffee mug jumped in the sink. Floodlights snapped on, washing the grass in sharp white light, and for half a second the whole world froze. Then I saw her. Brenda Whitmore, HOA clipboard queen, neighborhood rule collector, and professional problem maker, was tangled in my lavender bushes under my bedroom window with one shoe missing, a flashlight in her mouth, and a little black Bluetooth speaker still barking like a nervous terrier beside her hand. The same exact bark she had sworn under 3 separate complaint forms belonged to my dog. The same dog she told animal control was ruining the peace of Maple Ridge. The same dog that, at that exact moment, was asleep on my living room couch with his gray muzzle pressed into a pillow, snoring like a retired truck driver after Thanksgiving dinner. My name is Caleb Whitaker. I am 38 years old, I work HVAC, and I bought my little 3-bedroom house on Hawthorne Court because I wanted quiet. Not fancy quiet. Not country club quiet. Just regular American quiet. The kind where you come home with fiberglass dust in your hair, park your work van in the driveway, hear the cicadas buzzing near the fence, and let an old rescue dog sleep by your boots while you eat microwave chili over the sink. Baxter was not just a dog to me. He was the last living piece of my mother. She adopted him from a shelter outside Dayton when he was already older, already nervous, already the kind of animal that flinched at raised voices and trusted slowly. When she passed, Baxter came to me with her cedar blanket, her old ceramic food bowl, and a habit of resting his chin on my knee whenever the house got too quiet. He barely barked. I mean barely. A delivery driver could drop a package loud enough to wake the block, and Baxter would just lift one eyebrow like he was too tired to participate in society. But Brenda did not care about truth. Brenda cared about control. She lived across the street in a spotless white colonial with black shutters, a pearl SUV, and a front lawn cut so evenly it looked ironed. She was not officially the HOA president, but she called herself a compliance volunteer, which in Maple Ridge meant she walked around with a clipboard acting like the Supreme Court of mulch color, trash can timing, mailbox numbers, and anything else that gave her a reason to knock on doors. The first week I moved in, she left a note about my work van being an eyesore. The second week, she complained that my garage light was too bright. The third week, she stood at the edge of my driveway, smiling with teeth that never reached her eyes, and said big dogs made families uncomfortable. I remember the smell of her perfume cutting through the summer air, sweet and sharp, like flowers sprayed with furniture polish. Baxter was sitting behind my screen door, tail tucked, not making a sound. Brenda pointed at him anyway and said, "Rules are rules, Mr. Whitaker." 2 days later, the first barking complaint hit my mailbox. Then came another. Then another. Midnight barking. 3 a.m. barking. Aggressive barking. Constant barking. Each letter felt heavier than the last. Thick white paper with the HOA logo stamped at the top, like a threat wearing a necktie. By the time animal control knocked on my door for the second time, Baxter was shaking so badly I had to sit on the floor beside him until the officer left. That was the moment something in me went quiet. Not angry. Not loud. Quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before a furnace kicks on and the whole system starts moving heat through the house. I did not yell at Brenda. I did not argue in the Facebook group. I just started saving everything. Every letter. Every timestamp. Every camera clip showing Baxter asleep when Brenda claimed he was howling. And then, one humid Thursday night, while the neighborhood sprinklers hissed in the dark and Baxter snored against my sock, I heard barking outside my fence. Sharp. Clean. Wrong. The same 11 seconds, repeating over and over, like a bad ringtone pretending to be a crime. I looked at Baxter. He looked at me, and neither one of us made a sound. The first thing I did was not call the HOA. That is what Brenda wanted. She wanted me angry, sloppy, loud enough to look guilty. So I stood barefoot in my kitchen at almost midnight, listening to that fake bark repeat through the humid darkness, and I counted it. 1, 2, 3, all the way to 11 seconds. Then it started again. Same pitch, same pause, same little high squeak at the end like somebody had downloaded the first free dog sound they found online. Baxter lifted his head from my sock, blinked once, and went right back to sleep. That old boy had survived enough in his life to know when a threat was real and when it was just some foolish person making noise at a fence. I opened the camera app on my phone and pulled up the side yard feed. At first, all I saw was the grainy black and white shimmer of my chain-link fence, the maple tree moving in the breeze, and the pale mist from Mr. Hanley's sprinkler drifting across the property line. Then a shape moved behind the hedge. Brenda. She was standing just outside my back corner, half hidden by the row of boxwoods she had once complained were not evenly trimmed. Her phone was raised in one hand. In the other hand, she held something small and dark pointed toward my house. Every time the fake barking loop played, she aimed her phone at my bedroom window like she was filming proof for a courtroom drama only she had been invited to star in. The little red recording light on her screen glowed like a cigarette ember in the dark. My stomach did not twist. My hands did not shake. I just felt that clean, cold click inside my chest, the same feeling I get when I find a cracked heat exchanger in an attic and suddenly understand why the whole system has been failing. The problem was not Baxter. It had never been Baxter. The problem was Brenda manufacturing evidence and counting on everyone else being too tired to check the wiring behind her story. I saved the clip. Then I saved the next one. Then I went back through 3 weeks of footage with a cup of black coffee cooling beside my laptop and the smell of dust burning off my old desk lamp. Midnight. She was there. 3:14 in the morning, there again. 5:38. Just before the garbage trucks rolled through, there she was in her pale walking jacket, pretending to stretch near my fence while that same recorded bark bounced off my siding. My porch camera showed Baxter asleep. My kitchen camera showed Baxter asleep. His smart collar app showed deep rest, low activity, steady breathing. Meanwhile, Brenda's complaint forms described a vicious animal disturbing the peace for hours at a time. The next morning, another letter arrived. $750 in fines. Final warning before escalation, signed by the HOA board, but written in Brenda's stiff little phrases. Excessive canine disturbance. Repeated community disruption. Failure to maintain neighborly standards. I stood at the mailbox with cicadas screaming in the oak trees and the paper hot from the sun between my fingers. Across the street, Brenda was watering flowers that did not need water, watching me over the spray with that polished smile of hers. I lifted the envelope slightly, like a toast. Her smile tightened. That afternoon, I went to the hardware store after work. Not angry, not rushing, just methodical. I bought 2 infrared cameras, a weatherproof microphone, a motion sensor floodlight, and a small compressed air deterrent rated for nuisance wildlife around trash cans. Legal. Non-contact. Loud enough to scare off a raccoon, not hurt anybody with common sense and shoes on their side of the fence. I mounted everything inside my property line, measured twice, drilled once, and ran the wiring clean along the porch beam. Then I put up a sign big enough to read from 20 feet away. Private property. Motion sensor deterrent installed. Audio and video recording in use. As the sun went down, Baxter sat in the doorway watching me work, his gray ears twitching at the whine of my drill. For the first time in weeks, he looked calm. I scratched the white patch on his chest and told him, "Buddy, she wants barking. She is about to meet the truth at full volume." By Friday evening, Maple Ridge had that polished suburban glow that always made trouble look impossible from the street. Sprinklers ticked across trimmed lawns. Porch lights warmed up behind clean windows. Somewhere 2 blocks over, somebody was grilling burgers, and the smell of charcoal drifted through the cooling air like nothing ugly could ever happen in a neighborhood with matching mailboxes. But I knew better. I had spent the last 3 nights watching Brenda's pattern like I was diagnosing a stubborn furnace that only failed when the homeowner was not looking. She never came at the same minute twice, but she always came during the dead pocket of night, when most people were asleep and the roads were empty. She liked the space between midnight and 4 in the morning. She liked shadows, hedges, and plausible deniability. That Friday, she gave herself away before sunset. I was loading filters into my work van when she crossed the street in white sneakers and a pastel sweater, carrying a reusable grocery bag like she was bringing muffins to a church social. Her smile was already in place. "Mr. Whitaker," she said, "I do hope you are taking this situation seriously. The board is very concerned." I wiped my hands on a rag and looked past her at Baxter, who was sitting inside my screen door with his chin on the threshold, quiet as dust. I told her I was taking it seriously enough to install cameras. Her eyes flicked toward the new sign on the fence. Just for a second. That was all. But in that second, her smile lost its temperature. Cameras can be misunderstood, she said. So can dogs, I answered. The air between us went still. A lawnmower coughed to a stop somewhere down the block. Brenda tightened her grip on that grocery bag until the paper handles creased under her fingers. Then she gave me her favorite line, the one she used like a badge. Rules are rules. I nodded once. Yes, ma'am. They sure are. She walked away with her shoulders stiff, and I watched her reflection shrink in the side mirror of my van. That was when I knew she was coming. People like Brenda do not back off when they see a boundary. They test it. They look for the loose board, the dark corner, the place where they can step over and still claim they slipped. I went inside, fed Baxter his dinner, and checked every device. Camera 1 covered the side gate. Camera 2 covered the fence line. Camera 3 pointed toward the bedroom window where the fake barking always seemed loudest. The microphone was sealed under the eave, angled down, protected from rain. The motion sensor armed with a soft green blink. The air deterrent sat 6 feet inside my property line beside the trash enclosure, aimed toward open yard, not toward the fence, not toward the sidewalk, exactly where a raccoon would sneak if it wanted to tear into garbage. I tested it once before dark. A short blast cracked the evening open, and 3 crows lifted out of the maple tree like scraps of black paper. Baxter looked at me from the couch, unimpressed. I scratched his head and said, "Hopefully that is the last time you hear that, buddy." Around 10, I turned off the living room lights and left the hallway lamp glowing, the way I usually did when I had early calls. At 11:30, Brenda's porch went dark. At 12:15, the neighborhood settled into that deep quiet where every little sound gets sharp. The refrigerator hum, the clock above the stove, Baxter breathing in slow, steady waves at the foot of the couch. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, not touching my coffee, watching 4 camera feeds paint my yard in shades of gray. 1 hour passed, then another. Just after 3 in the morning, the side gate camera flickered. A pale shape moved near the hedge. Brenda stepped into frame wearing a dark jacket over light pants, moving carefully, like the grass itself might testify against her. In one hand, she carried the same little black speaker. In the other, a plastic bag of dog treats. She paused at my warning sign, leaned close enough to read it, and then looked straight at my house with that tiny satisfied smile. My chest went cold and calm. She had seen the sign. She had made her choice. She slipped through the side gate, crossed 10 feet of my yard, crouched beneath my bedroom window, and set the speaker in the mulch. Then she pressed her phone. The fake bark snapped through the night. 11 seconds. Pause. 11 seconds again. Baxter did not move. The sensor did. The floodlights hit first. White light exploded across the side yard, sharp enough to turn every blade of grass into a silver needle. Brenda froze under my bedroom window with her thumb still hovering over her phone, the fake bark cutting off halfway through its loop, like even the speaker knew the game was over. Then the air horn fired. One clean blast. Loud, legal, and impossible to ignore. It rolled off the fence, bounced against the back wall, and punched straight through the quiet little fantasy Brenda had built around herself. She jerked backward, dropped the bag of dog treats, and stumbled into the lavender bed she had once reported for growing 2 inches past approved border height. Purple stems shook around her knees. The black speaker tipped sideways in the mulch and kept blinking blue. Inside the house, Baxter lifted his head, gave me one tired look from the couch, and laid back down like this was beneath him. I almost laughed, but I did not. I stayed still at the kitchen table, watching the camera feeds record every second in clean, time-stamped silence. Brenda looked left, then right, then straight at the warning sign she had read 10 minutes earlier. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out at first. The woman who could write a 3-page complaint about a trash can lid suddenly had no language for being caught in somebody else's yard at 3:17 in the morning with a barking machine in her hand. Then she found her voice. "Help!" she shouted, loud enough to wake half the block. "He is attacking me." I stood up slowly, slipped my phone into my pocket, and walked to the back door. The cool night air smelled like damp grass, lavender, and that faint plastic heat you get from cheap electronics working too hard. Brenda was already scrambling to her feet, brushing mulch off her pants with frantic little swipes. The speaker barked again. 11 seconds. Pause. 11 seconds. She grabbed for it, missed, and knocked it deeper under the shrub. That was the sound that did it for me. Not the horn. Not her yelling. That fake dog bark, still playing from her own device while my actual dog slept 20 feet away under a faded quilt. I opened the back door, but stayed on the threshold. "Brenda," I said, calm enough that my own voice surprised me, "you are on my property. You need to leave." Her face twisted into outrage so fast it looked practiced. "You set a trap for me," she snapped. "You could have caused a medical emergency." I pointed to the sign, glowing plain as day in the floodlight. "It says motion sensor deterrent. It has been there since yesterday afternoon. You read it before you came in." Her eyes flicked to the sign and away again. "I was investigating a nuisance complaint," she said. "As a compliance volunteer, I have authority." "No, ma'am," I said. "You have a clipboard. There is a difference." That landed. Her jaw tightened so hard I could see the muscles move in her cheek. Porch lights began clicking on across the street. Mr. Hanley's blinds parted. Mrs. Alvarez opened her front door in a robe and stood there squinting into the brightness. Brenda saw the audience gathering and changed her posture instantly. Shoulders back, chin up, victim mode, polished and ready. She pulled out her phone and dialed with trembling fingers that were not trembling a minute earlier. "I need police," she said, loud enough for the neighbors. "My neighbor has installed some kind of dangerous device, and I was just trying to protect the community from his aggressive dog." The speaker barked again from the lavender. I looked through the glass at Baxter. He was still asleep. His smart collar blinked soft green against his neck, recording the quiet truth she had spent weeks trying to bury. I did not interrupt her call. I did not argue for the neighbors. I just tapped my phone screen and made sure the live camera feed was saved to the cloud. Then I stepped back inside, poured the cold coffee from my mug into the sink, and waited for the red and blue lights to arrive. The first patrol car rolled up at 3:34, tires whispering over the curbside grit, red and blue lights sliding across the clean white siding of every house on Hawthorne Court. The second car followed close behind. No sirens, just lights, radios, and the low crunch of boots on pavement. Brenda met them halfway across my lawn like she owned the crime scene, one hand pressed to her chest, the other pointing toward my house with the kind of drama usually reserved for bad weather reports. Officer Daniel Price stepped out first, broad shoulders, gray at the temples, calm eyes that had probably seen every version of neighborhood nonsense a person could invent. His partner, Officer Melissa Grant, moved slower, scanning the yard, the sign, the open side gate, the lavender bed, and that little black speaker still blinking under the leaves. The fake bark played again. 11 seconds. Pause. 11 seconds. Officer Grant looked down at it, then up at Brenda. "Ma'am, is that your device?" Brenda did not answer right away. That was the first crack. She started talking around the question instead of through it. She said she had been responding to an ongoing animal disturbance. She said the HOA had received multiple complaints. She said my dog was a public nuisance, my equipment was dangerous, and my attitude had become hostile to community standards. Every phrase sounded polished, rehearsed, buffed smooth by weeks of pretending paperwork was the same thing as truth. I stood on my back step in jeans, work boots, and an old thermal shirt, with Baxter visible through the glass door behind me, curled on the couch like a sleepy gray comma. Officer Price turned to me. "Sir, can you explain what happened here?" "Yes, officer," I said. "My security system activated when someone entered my fenced backyard after posted warning. I have video." Brenda cut in immediately. "He is twisting this. I had authority to inspect the source of illegal barking." Officer Grant glanced at the sign again. "Private property. Motion sensor deterrent installed. Audio and video recording in use." Then she looked at the side gate. "Was the gate locked?" "No," I said, "but it was closed." "Did you invite her onto the property?" "No, ma'am." Brenda made a sharp little sound in her throat. "This is ridiculous. I am a compliance volunteer." Officer Price gave her a look so flat it could have leveled concrete. "Volunteer for the Homeowners Association does not give you police authority, ma'am." The night went quiet except for the sprinkler ticking down the block. I opened my phone and played the footage from the beginning. Brenda at the hedge. Brenda reading the sign. Brenda opening the gate. Brenda crouching under my bedroom window. Brenda placing the speaker in the mulch. The fake barking filled the air from my phone and from the actual speaker at the same time, overlapping into a cheap little chorus of lies. Officer Grant crouched down and picked up the speaker with a gloved hand. It was still connected, still named Brenda living room. She looked at the screen, then at Brenda. That second crack was louder than the air horn. Brenda's face went pale, then pink, then tight with panic disguised as outrage. Someone must have renamed it, she said. I almost admired the speed of the lie. Almost. I pulled up the 3 weeks of saved clips next. Same fence line. Same time windows. Same 11-second bark. Then I opened Baxter's caller history. Deep sleep. Low movement. Stable heart rate. The data stretched across the screen in neat blue lines. Boring and beautiful. Officer Price watched without interrupting. When the last clip ended, he looked through my door at Baxter, who had finally woken up and was staring at all of us with the tired disappointment of a dog who had better manners than most adults. Brenda folded her arms. Well, maybe tonight was mishandled, she said, but there is a long history here. I said nothing. I just opened the folder marked HOA notices and showed them the fines. $750. Final warning. Escalation pending. All based on barking that never came from my dog. Officer Grant's voice changed then. Not louder. Sharper. Ma'am, filing repeated false complaints to create financial penalties can become a serious problem. Brenda looked toward the neighbors gathered on their porches, and for the first time since I had met her, she did not look powerful. She looked small under all that floodlight, standing beside her own evidence while the speaker barked at her feet. Officer Price did not make a speech. That was what made it worse for Brenda. He did not raise his voice, did not embarrass her for sport, did not give the neighbors the show they were leaning over porch rails to watch. He just took out his notebook, clicked his pen, and started asking simple questions that cut cleaner than any argument I could have made. What time did you enter Mr. Whitaker's yard? Did he give you permission? Did you bring the speaker with you? Did you place it under his window? Did you submit the previous complaints? Each question landed in the wet grass between us with a soft, final weight. Brenda kept trying to decorate her answers. She talked about community standards, repeated disturbances, responsible homeowners, and the importance of protecting property values. Officer Grant kept bringing her back to the same plain facts. The speaker was hers. The yard was mine. The sign was visible. Baxter had not barked. At one point, Brenda actually pointed through my back door at him and said, "That animal has been a menace for weeks." Baxter chose that exact moment to yawn so wide his old jaw creaked, then rested his chin on the couch cushion again. Mrs. Alvarez made a small sound from across the street that might have been a cough and might have been a laugh. I kept my mouth shut because the truth was finally doing all the work. Officer Grant photographed the speaker, the dog treats, the open side gate, the warning sign, and the lavender bed. Her camera flash popped in the dark like tiny lightning. Then she asked Brenda for her phone. Brenda clutched it against her sweater. Why would you need that? Officer Grant's expression did not change. Because you told emergency services you were attacked by a device while investigating a dog complaint, and we now have evidence suggesting you may have entered private property to manufacture that complaint. If your phone contains the audio file and recordings you submitted, it matters. Brenda swallowed. The sound was small, but in the quiet yard I heard it. Officer Price turned to me and asked if I wanted to make a formal trespass complaint. I looked at Brenda standing there with mulch on her pants and her perfect hair falling loose around her face. 3 weeks earlier, I might have said no just to keep peace. 3 weeks earlier, I still believed peace came from being reasonable with unreasonable people. But I thought about Baxter shaking behind my legs while animal control stood on my porch. I thought about the $750 fine sitting on my kitchen counter. I thought about my mother's cedar blanket folded beside Baxter's bed and how she had taught me that kindness did not mean handing your front door key to someone who wanted to walk through your life with muddy shoes. Yes, I said. I want it documented. Brenda's head snapped toward me. Caleb, she said, suddenly using my first name like we were neighbors again, not evidence and witness. This has gotten out of hand. I looked at the speaker in Officer Grant's evidence bag. No, Brenda. It got out of hand when you decided my dog needed to be guilty more than you needed to be honest. For the first time, she had no comeback. Officer Price explained that she was being formally warned not to enter my property again and that the report would include the false complaint evidence for review. He did not put on a performance. He did not need to. The words alone drained the authority out of her face. The HOA clipboard queen had called the police expecting them to carry her version of the story across my lawn. Instead, they were carrying her speaker in a clear plastic bag. By 4:20 in the morning, the patrol cars pulled away. The neighborhood lights clicked off one by one. Brenda crossed the street without looking back, moving fast, her white sneakers dark with dew. I stood in my yard until the silence returned. Real silence. Not the kind forced by fear or paperwork. The kind that belongs to a house after the lie has finally stopped making noise. Inside, Baxter was awake now, sitting by the door with his ears half lifted. I knelt down and rubbed the gray fur behind his neck. His collar blinked green, calm as a heartbeat. Then my phone buzzed on the kitchen table. An email from the HOA. Emergency board meeting scheduled for Monday evening. Subject line: formal review of ongoing animal nuisance case. I looked at Baxter. He looked at me. And for the first time all night, I smiled. Monday evening, the Maple Ridge clubhouse smelled like burnt coffee, lemon floor cleaner, and nervous people pretending they had only come for community business. Folding chairs scraped against the tile as neighbors packed into the room shoulder to shoulder, whispering over paper cups and glancing at me like I was carrying something explosive instead of a laptop bag. Baxter stayed home, asleep on my mother's cedar blanket, because I had already decided he had been dragged into enough human foolishness. I arrived 10 minutes early in my work pants and clean boots, with every file organized the way I organize a service call. Dates, times, camera angles, caller data, police report number. I sat in the second row, not the front, not hiding in the back, just close enough for the board to see I was not there to beg. Brenda sat at the front table beside the HOA president, Ronald Pierce, a retired insurance manager with silver hair and the personality of wet cardboard. She wore a cream blazer, pearl earrings, and the frozen expression of someone trying to look offended instead of worried. The speaker was not there, of course. The police had that, but I could still hear it in my head. 11 seconds. Pause. 11 seconds. Ronald tapped the microphone, and it squealed through the room, making half the neighbors flinch. He cleared his throat and announced that we were gathered to review repeated animal nuisance complaints involving my property. Brenda looked toward the crowd with soft eyes, already reaching for sympathy. She said this had never been personal. She said she cared deeply about peace, safety, and families. She said she had spent weeks trying to resolve a difficult situation while I had escalated matters by installing what she called a hostile device. I watched her mouth shape the words and felt nothing hot rise in me. No anger, no embarrassment, just that same clean quiet from my kitchen table. When she finished, Ronald asked if I had anything to say. I stood up, and the metal legs of my chair clicked against the tile. Yes, sir, I said. I have evidence. Brenda's head turned slightly. Not much, just enough. I connected my laptop to the clubhouse screen, and the first clip appeared behind the board in black and white. My living room. Baxter asleep. Timestamp 12:42 in the morning. Then the side yard. Brenda at the hedge, phone raised, fake barking rolling through the speakers. A murmur moved through the room. I played the next clip. Then the next. Different nights. Same sound. Same 11-second loop. Same woman near my fence while my dog slept inside. Brenda tried to interrupt, saying the footage lacked context, but Officer Price's report number sat in the corner of my slide like a nail through cardboard. I showed the smart collar charts next. Deep sleep, low movement, normal heart rate, neat blue lines that made all her dramatic language look ridiculous. Then I played the 3:17 footage. The warning sign, her reading it, the gate opening, the speaker in her hand, the dog treats, the floodlights, the horn. Nobody laughed when she fell into the lavender. That surprised me. The room had gone too quiet for laughter. It was the silence of people realizing they had signed their names to someone else's lie. Ronald removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Brenda leaned toward the microphone. Rules are rules, she said, but her voice had lost that polished edge. Mrs. Alvarez stood up in the back before anyone could respond. Yes, she said, they are, and trespassing is one of them. That cracked the room open. Mr. Hanley said he had seen Brenda near my fence twice before dawn. A younger couple from Juniper Lane admitted their own dog had been blamed for noise during a weekend they were out of town. Another neighbor said Brenda had warned him not to question compliance notices unless he wanted his driveway inspected. One by one, the perfect little wall she had built started dropping bricks. Ronald called for order, but order had already changed sides. I did not have to raise my voice. I did not have to call her names. I just stood beside the screen while Brenda watched her authority drain out under fluorescent lights. By the end of the meeting, the board voted to suspend all fines connected to Baxter pending formal review. Then Ronald used a phrase I had never heard from an HOA before. Possible misconduct by a compliance volunteer. Brenda stared at him like he had spoken in a foreign language. Outside, the night air felt cool against my face as I walked to my van. The clubhouse door opened behind me, and I heard Brenda's heels stop on the pavement. "Caleb," she said, small and sharp at the same time. "You embarrassed me." I turned with my keys in my hand. "No, Brenda. I played the video. You handled the rest." The formal review took 9 days, and during those 9 days Maple Ridge felt different. Not peaceful yet. More like a house after a breaker trips, quiet, but waiting for someone to find the panel. Brenda stopped walking her morning route. Her pearl SUV stayed in the driveway. The HOA newsletter, which usually arrived every Thursday with reminders about lawn edging and approved wreath sizes, did not show up at all. That silence told me more than any announcement could. People had started asking questions. The following Wednesday, Ronald Pierce called me at 6:40 in the evening while I was replacing a blower motor in a ranch house 15 miles away. I heard the hesitation in his voice over the hum of the open furnace cabinet. "Mr. Whitaker," he said, "the board has completed its preliminary review." Preliminary is a word people use when they are hoping the truth will become smaller before they have to say it out loud. I wiped my hands on a rag and stepped into the homeowner's garage, where the air smelled like cardboard boxes and motor oil. "Go ahead," I said. He exhaled. "All fines related to your dog are being voided. A written apology will be issued. Mrs. Whitmore has been removed from all compliance activity effective immediately." I looked at the old furnace filter in my hand, gray with dust, and thought about how much trouble starts because nobody bothers to check what is actually clogging the system. Then Ronald kept talking, and that was when the little neighborhood drama turned into something bigger. During the review, the board had found 8 other complaints Brenda had submitted against residents without proper witness statements. 3 involved dogs. 2 involved trash cans. 1 involved a child's basketball hoop she claimed blocked emergency access, even though it sat 20 feet from the curb. Another involved Mr. Hanley's porch light, which she said created a safety hazard because it was too bright, while my own footage showed her standing under that same light at 2 in the morning taking pictures of his driveway. The last one was the worst. She had reported the younger couple on Juniper Lane for operating an unapproved home business because delivery trucks stopped there twice a week. They had a newborn, and those deliveries were medical supplies. Ronald's voice got smaller as he said it. "There will be policy changes," he added. "There always are after people get caught." 2 nights later, the board held a second meeting. This one was not crowded. It was tense. The clubhouse chairs were set in straight rows. The coffee pot was unplugged, and Brenda sat alone near the front with a folder clutched in her lap. She did not look at me when I walked in. Her cream blazer had been replaced by a gray sweater, and without the clipboard, she seemed almost ordinary. That made it stranger, not better. Ordinary people can still do extraordinary damage when nobody stops them. Ronald read the findings in a flat voice. Fines reversed. Records corrected. Compliance volunteer position dissolved pending new guidelines. All future complaints requiring 2 forms of verification before penalties. Then he turned to Brenda and asked if she wanted to address the room. She stood slowly. For 1 second, I thought she might actually apologize. Her eyes moved across the neighbors, then landed on me. "I was only trying to protect our standards," she said. Mrs. Alvarez made that little cough again. This time nobody mistook it for anything else. Brenda's face tightened, but she kept going. "Maybe I was too passionate. Maybe I made mistakes. But people like Mr. Whitaker need to understand that communities have expectations." There it was. Not regret. Not accountability. Just the same old control wearing softer shoes. I stood up before Ronald could stop me. My chair legs scraped against the tile. I did not bring a speech. I brought 1 piece of paper. The police incident report. I placed it on the table in front of the board, next to the voided fine notice. "Communities do have expectations," I said. "Mine is that nobody enters my yard at 3 in the morning to frame an old dog." The room went completely still. Brenda looked down at the report. Her name sat there in black ink, heavier than any HOA letterhead she had ever sent me. Ronald cleared his throat and announced the final vote. Brenda Whitmore was permanently barred from any volunteer enforcement role. The board would issue written corrections to every resident affected by her complaints. And if she contacted me directly again about Baxter, the HOA would support a no-contact request. For once, the rules had found the right address. The morning after the final vote, I woke up before my alarm to the sound of nothing. No fake barking from the fence. No car idling across the street. No clipboard knock waiting at the door. Just the low hum of the refrigerator, the soft tick of the kitchen clock, and Baxter breathing at the foot of my bed like a little engine that had finally stopped bracing for trouble. Sunlight came through the blinds in thin gold lines, striping the floorboards my mother used to tell me needed more polish. I made coffee, opened the back door, and let the cool air roll through the house. The yard smelled like damp grass and lavender, the same lavender Brenda had landed in when her own light tripped the lights. The plant was bent, but not broken. That felt about right. By noon, an email from the HOA arrived with the apology attached. It was stiff, polished, and probably written by someone afraid of being sued, but it said what mattered. All fines were removed. All animal nuisance claims against Baxter were withdrawn. My account was cleared. A new complaint policy would require actual evidence before any homeowner got punished. I printed the email, not because I needed the paper, but because some victories deserve weight in your hand. Then I took the old fine notices, the final warning letter, and Brenda's first complaint, and slid them into a folder labeled closed. The word looked good there. Clean. Final. That afternoon, Mr. Hanley came by with a plate of oatmeal cookies his daughter had baked, even though he admitted she had overdone the cinnamon. Mrs. Alvarez brought Baxter a bag of senior dog treats and told him he was the most polite defendant she had ever seen. The young couple from Juniper Lane stopped at the curb with their baby stroller and thanked me without making a big scene. That meant more than they probably knew. For weeks, Brenda had made me feel like I was standing alone in my own driveway, while the whole neighborhood watched from behind curtains. Turns out a lot of them had been watching because they were scared she would aim the clipboard at them next. Fear makes quiet people. Evidence gives them their voices back. Brenda did not move away. People always expect that part in stories, like the villain packs a suitcase and disappears before sunset. Real life is messy, eh? She stayed in her white Colonial across the street. Her lawn stayed perfect. Her SUV stayed spotless. But the sidewalk changed around her. Neighbors stopped slowing down for her opinions. The board stopped treating her complaints like commandments. And every time she saw me walking Baxter in the evening, she turned toward her roses like they suddenly needed inspection. Baxter, for his part, never cared. He padded along at my side, gray muzzle high, tail loose, enjoying the simple American luxury of being left alone. A week later, I took down the air deterrent. I did not need it anymore. I unscrewed the bracket from the porch beam, coiled the wire, and set the little device on my workbench beside the cheap Bluetooth speaker receipt from the police report copy. The horn had done its job. Not because it scared Brenda, because it woke everybody else up. As for the warning sign, I left that in the yard. Private property, audio and video recording in use. Not as a threat, as a reminder. Boundaries only work when people can see them. That evening, Baxter and I sat on the back steps while the sun dropped behind the maple trees. The cicadas started up in the grass, steady and loud and real. He rested his chin on my boot, and I ran my hand over the white patch on his chest where my mother used to scratch him. I thought about how justice rarely shows up the way people imagine. It does not always bang a gavel. It does not always arrive in a courtroom. Sometimes it is a camera timestamp. Sometimes it is a dog collar showing deep sleep. Sometimes it is an 11-second audio loop played one time too many by someone who thought nobody was listening. Brenda spent weeks trying to make my quiet look guilty. In the end, all I had to do was protect the truth long enough for her to step into the light. And when she did, the whole neighborhood heard it.